Johnny Mac and Jody Mac is Mac and Mac Birds 365 on Super Week. It's Super Monday because we are now less than 7 days before the Super Bowl. We got through last week, the down week, the bye week leading to the big game. We're now actually in the week of, and the Eagles already in Arizona prepping through different times, different ways, something you're not used to, spending an entire week in the city where you're going to be visiting. Nick Sirianni, never done it before with this group. I had faith in him, even though Andy Reid has been there and done that several different times. I think Sirianni's of the right mindset to get the Eagles prepped and ready. Ed Kracz is ready to help us get prepped and ready for the big upcoming game. Ed, I know you're heading out to Arizona tomorrow. What's the most important thing you have to do in prepping for the Super Bowl?
I don't know, make sure I have a couple pairs of shorts packed because unlike Minnesota, the weather's going to be pretty nice, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What's not going to be nice is moving around. You don't have that Mall of America. Yeah, you don't have just walk across the mall for player availability yet.
Yeah, but you know, that walk was an adventure, John. If you remember, there was a 15-foot pile of snow in one corner that you had to scale like a mini Mount Everest, and then there were slippery spots with ice in the parking lot. So there's give and take, and
there is give and take.
I'm going to take the shuttle buses and the short pants over the hike over the.
I'm with you. I won't be out there till later in the week, but you'll be out there tomorrow. We started. Jody was just talking about the coaches, and it's obviously an interesting matchup for a number of reasons. Obviously, you have experience versus a young coach. You also have Andy's history here in Philadelphia, but Nick's history with Kansas City. That was his first position, first job in the NFL, first job as a position coach. He met his wife out there. He has a lot of friends out there. So Kansas City means a lot to him. Coaching matchup. Who do you like? Why do you like him?
Oh, it's hard not to like the Chiefs and Andy Reid. I mean, this guy's a Hall of Fame coach. Nick, I'm still waiting to see how he does in a big game, in a close big game.
He's had big games. He just blows people out. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. And if they play to their script all season, it'll be a blowout, and we won't have to worry about Nick's coaching decisions. But I'm not sure it's going to play out that way. But Reid and his staff. I mean, there's a lot of experience on his staff too. You mentioned Nick meeting his wife in KC. Well, Spagnuolo met his wife when he was working in Philadelphia, and he's still married to her. They still come back to Philadelphia a lot. They have a place here. His wife still works, and she does some work in Philadelphia. So, that's even more interesting when you think about it, is Sirianni met his wife in KC when he was there, and Spags met his wife when he was in Philadelphia. But you wonder if Sirianni's going to win any of these people over that are starting to dislike him because of the face and because of his emotion that he shows on the side.
Face.
He's got a week to try to win people over to say, hey, I'm not a bad guy. I just like to wear my emotions on my sleeve. But if you're talking from a strategical standpoint, you have to go with Andy Reid and his staff, in my opinion. I mean, they've been in this Super Bowl, which is their third in 4 years, Kansas City. I know the teams are different, but, there's still a lot of players on that side that Reid's coached, and it's definitely an advantage KC in the coaching department.
Ed, if you are right and Nick Sirianni works on winning people over this week, I'll actually be disappointed in him because, we're Philly guys and we see it from a Philly perspective, and we love the fact that he coaches with his emotions on his sleeve. I don't want him changing anything. I want him to be Nick Sirianni leading up to this game. It's been pretty damn successful, 16-3. I don't want him changing this week. Do you?
Well, I mean, that villain role, you have to embrace the villain role, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That Joker.
You're talking to two wrestling guys. We understand the whole villain role thing.
Yeah,
Me and McMullen. Come on, he's not going
baby
babyface on us this week.
Yeah, listen, you're right. I don't want him to change, but, there's more to Nick Sirianni than what you see on a sideline with a camera in his face every week. I mean, maybe he'll show that side and earn some sympathetic votes in his favor, so to speak. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you don't want him to change. You want him to be himself, but at the same time, there's a lot more to him than what the nation sees every Sunday.
Well, Nick is the nicest guy in the world, but is it just is it just a new age way of coaching, showing the emotion? You go back, I always bring up Tom Landry with the suit on, or Bud Grant, and he's so stoic. That was supposed to be how you were as an NFL head coach. And all of a sudden you got Nick acting, as Mike Missinelli said, Harry High School at times. Is that just the way the new age of the NFL is going?
Well, I mean, who are some other new age coaches that you can compare him
Mike
to?
McDaniel's a goofball. He's a goofball.
Yeah.
Some of the young, other guys, some of the other young coaches, Tone chimes in. Sean McVay is very animated, maybe not to the degree of Nick, but that's true.
I mean,
a little bit.
We still remember Tom Coughlin too when he was on the sidelines. He was very animated. A lot of people didn't like him for his animation and his, his red face and his, the look that he put out there too. So, I don't know if it's a new age thing or it's just kind of been there all along, and we're paying more attention to it now because it's a coach in Philadelphia who's doing this. I mean, Peterson wasn't like that, right? I mean, he was pretty. Just staring at his
he comes from Andy's,
yeah.
Kevin O'Connell, he's another guy who cheers when his team scores. Younger guy, I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. If you don't want somebody to cheer, to me, it's always been pretty easy. Don't let them score. Coach can't cheer, player can't cheer, can't dance, can't celebrate. Stop it.
It's so hard. Listen, I do a little coaching in wrestling, high school wrestling. And when your guys are out there and, it's an emotional match and a heated match, it's hard not to get excited. And I would hate to see a picture of me, when my guys are out there too, because I can get pretty emotional. And I just think it's the nature of the business, and people handle it differently. Nick handles it one way. Maybe it's that Italian heritage. And other coaches, not so much. They keep it buttoned up.
By the way, Jody, I have given Ed some excellent coaching advice during the year as he coaches his wrestling kids.
Can you confirm that, Ed Kracz?
Yeah, yes. It's the 5 core principles: accountability, connecting, competing. The same thing that we hear from Nick and his charge.
Thinking parroting Nick Sirianni is going to help your wrestlers.
It works in all frames of coaching, Jody.
Okay.
Starts with connection.
Yeah, we just won the district team tournament for the first time in school history.
I don't want to take credit for that, but I'm going to take credit for that.
When you're giving your championship acceptance speech at the end of the year, will you be referencing John McMullen and Nick Sirianni, helping you get to where you needed to be as a coach, Ed Kracz?
Yeah, I'm gonna
need a video of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to stay in the background. I'm just consulting.
Yeah.
I need you to consult on a prediction for me for this game, Ed Kracz. Who will be the Philadelphia Eagles' leading rusher in Super Bowl 57?
Ooh. So I guess my choices are Hurts, Sanders, and Gainwell, right?
It could be Devonta Smith on a jet sweep going 97 yards. Yeah, I'm not counting out anybody.
I don't know about that one.
I'm just trying to give you.
I know. Give me another option here. Option D.
Could be Boston Scott. Miles sprains an ankle. Boston Scott goes in, and who knows? Who knows?
Listen, I think the way Kenny Gainwell's playing in these first 2 playoff games, it would be hard not to say Kenny Gainwell. Although I do think the Eagles are really going to try to get Miles involved against this defense. I'm going to go Kenny Gainwell. I like the way he's playing. It almost seems like there's already a transition in place for next season with Gainwell taking over as the lead back, because I'm not sure Sanders will be back. And maybe we've seen some of that, whether it's conscious or not. Gainwell's really taken a big step forward here, and I'm going with Playoff Kenny, as he likes to be called. He gave himself that nickname.
Playoff Kenny. Playoff Lenny, Playoff Kenny.
Playoff Kenny. Yeah. So I'll go Playoff Kenny just based on what he's shown so far.
Now,
didn't really work for Playoff Lenny this year. He didn't do much for the Bucs in their playoff game, so not sure Kenny should go there.
I'm kind of torn on Kenny Gainwell, Ed, for this reason. He's played great, but the personality of the game, it was blowout. And they were trying to get out of the game. And they were trying to manage Jalen Hurts and trying to manage Miles Sanders. And Kenny got some extra work because it was a blowout. I don't think this game is going to be a blowout. So I think it's going to be Miles Sanders the whole way. And that would lean me towards Miles as the leading rusher. But I think the bigger question is, can Jalen Hurts overcome Miles Sanders? Is the shrink wrap completely off Jalen Hurts? If they need Jalen Hurts to run it 17 times, this is the Super Bowl, right? He's going to run it 17 times.
And he might, if the Chiefs aren't playing him the way I think the Chiefs are going to play him, he could run 17 times, and he could be your leading rusher because the wraps will be off. There's no tomorrow after this game. It's into the offseason they go. And you have how many months? 6 months before you play again? So, sure, wraps are off Hurts, but you don't want to do anything in-game to have him make a trip to the sidelines, and then you put Gardner Minshew in. So you still have to be careful in this game with him. But who's to say he doesn't take off running when he gets the opportunity if the pocket starts to break down and he tries to make something happen? I'm still going Gainwell. You haven't talked me out of it.
All right, fair enough. I'm going with +1. I think Jalen is going to have a big game on the ground and maybe break a really big one. And it could be a game-breaking type play, but that's just me. We're all clinging to it now. We've got 5 days to change our mind between now and kickoff. Yeah. All right, our buddy Reuben Frank had a great stat in his 10 observation column over the weekend. This will be the Eagles' 4th Super Bowl. In their 3 previous Super Bowls, they've never had an interception. They're the only team in the NFL that has played in at least 2 Super Bowls and not gotten an interception, and they've played in 3. So the Philadelphia Eagles are due for at least 1 interception. Who's going to get it, Ed Kracz?
I'll go with CJ Gardner Johnson. I think it'll be him. Hasn't had one since he came back. In fact, I can't remember the last one the Eagles had. Did they have any in the playoffs?
Bradbury got the big one.
Right against Jones at midfield. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so they do have the one. But I'm going to go CJ. I think, and again, I guess it's dependent if Maddox plays, because I think CJ has more of a chance to pick one off as playing back at his safety spot where he can kind of roam the field and, look for any errant throws that Mahomes will put out there. And Mahomes does put some errant throws out there if he's under pressure. But if Maddox plays, and there might be some doubt about that because we saw him in a walking boot this week in practice, although it's Saturday's practice, he didn't have the walking boot on. So I think Maddox will play just because this is it. This is the Super Bowl. He played in the NFC title game, 19 snaps. But I'll go C.J. Johnson. I think he's due. When you talk about the team being due, I think C.J.'s due as well. So I'll go with Gardner Johnson on that one.
All right, you mentioned, Ed, Spags a little bit, Kansas City defensive coordinator, well known from his time here, he was Andy's secondary coach at some point, then he was a linebackers coach, then he kind of moved on and got a coordinator job, eventually becoming a head coach. Now he's back as Andy's DC. Well known. He's not Wink Martindale, but he's up there as a guy who's going to come after the quarterback, especially on third downs. If you're in that known pass situation, as Jonathan Gannon likes to call it, you think he's coming after Jalen Hurts, or do you think he changes up?
No, I think he's coming after Hurts. Why wouldn't you? I mean, let's see if we can attack this offensive line, maybe outnumber them, bring in an extra rusher or 2 to outnumber that Eagles offensive front. Sure, I'm sending him. And, you mentioned Spags. That guy was a head coach in the league.
Yeah.
Not overly successful, but when we start the show talking about experience in the coaching ranks, Spags certainly has it as a D coordinator. And, I think, he might be able to do some things that will affect Jalen Hurts, and I think one of them is to bring pressure. especially up the middle. The Eagles have been pretty good at sealing up that middle, with Kelce, Siamalu, and Dickerson. But with Chris Jones, that's a whole nother animal here coming up the middle. So I expect Spags to come after him. And
I hope Spagnuolo blitzes, because that will, in my estimation, lend itself to Jalen pulling it down, taking it off, and making a big play with his legs. They got 2 rookie cornerbacks out there who are improved. I thought they played Cincinnati real well in the AFC Championship game. You got the best triumvirate of receivers in the NFL, and Burrow did not break out and win that game. I thought the young cornerbacks played well, but they're still young, and they could get caught with their back turned with Jalen running up behind them, which could lend itself to a 25 or 30-yard run. So I hope Spagnuolo does blitz, because I think Hurts will handle it well. I want to talk about the other side of the ball for Kansas City, and that's their offensive line. The Eagles have been great in the playoffs with their pressure, with their defensive line, getting to the quarterback, not only causing turnovers, but causing guys to go to the sidelines with injuries. Not going to be as easy this time. Kansas City's got one of the better offensive line. We're spoiled here in Philadelphia because the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. Kansas City's offensive line is pretty damn good, Ed.
Yeah, it starts in the middle, right? Where probably most offensive lines should start if you want to be top of the line, so to speak. Creed Humphrey, a kid that, listen, when the Eagles took Landon Dickerson in that draft, I thought Creed Humphrey was sitting there. And if you wanted a healthy center, because Dickerson came in off the ACL, but I thought, he would have been I thought he was going to be a better pick than Dickerson. And, Dickerson's really good, but Creed Humphrey's really good too. So, that offensive line is, that's where it starts, is in the middle, and then it branches out from there. But again, they better play well, because this Eagles defensive front, the way they're playing, you got to block them, and we'll see if they can. I think it's an advantage Eagles. If you look at the offensive line for the Chiefs versus the defensive line for the Eagles, I go with an advantage Eagles, no matter how good that line is, because this defensive front is historic. 78 sacks when you factor in the 2 playoff games. So they better prove themselves to be one of the best lines in the league, or the Eagles are going to just, run roughshod over them.
Yeah, and they do have, on paper, they have one of the best offensive lines. But, and this is where the Eagles kind of set themselves apart on the offensive line as well, they got 4 really good offensive linemen. And they got sort of the sore thumb, who was Andrew Wiley. And who gets the lineup against Andrew Wiley? Hassan Reddick, Mr. 19 and a half of those. How many? 78 sacks. That's a nice matchup for the Eagles.
Yeah, they can't leave Wiley there on Reddick. They'll probably have to give him help. I mean, don't you think? I mean, listen.
Well, you don't want to help with Travis Kelce, because that impacts your passing game.
No.
So, maybe you chip with the running back, maybe you do some event. Andy's really good at that stuff, but that looks like a big advantage for the Eagles. Conversely, I've been talking about this, Ed. I talked myself into it during these weeks. I said, wow, Dexter Lawrence played really well against Minnesota. He's going to be a problem. Wasn't a problem. Nick Bosa is going to be Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to be a problem. Wasn't a problem. Now we get to Chris Jones, who has been the best defensive lineman in the NFL this season. Is he going to be a problem?
Well, I mean, if form holds, like you're saying, no, he won't be a problem. Listen, Jones was fired up against the Bengals. He was the one saying, Burrowhead Stadium and this and that.
Yeah.
We'll see if he brings that same motivation. I'm sure he will. I mean, he's a great player. But again, Eagles' offensive line has played great players, and they've, like you said, shut them down. So we'll see how you can't let him, wreck the game. Like Reddick wrecked the game against the 49ers for their complete disrespect in blocking him, trying to do things with a receiver and a backup tight end. Andy Reid's not going to have any of that. He's going to have a plan to try to block Reddick. And I don't think that plan is, okay, Wiley, here you go. you're out there on an island. He's all yours. No, I don't think that's going to happen. He'll figure out a way, whether he can chip, like you said, with the running backs. And that's an interesting thing. Isaiah Pacheco's a rookie.
Yeah.
How good is he in pass protection? I imagine at this stage of the season, he's probably better than he was when he came out of Rutgers at the start of the year. But Andy will have a plan. Those guys and Eric Bieniemy, they'll have a plan to block Reddick. If they don't, it's going to be a foolish game plan because Reddick can wreck the game. We saw it. We've seen it many times this year.
He did last weekend. Purdy's done it a lot, as you correctly stated. And Eagles pass rush is aggressive with their front four. We're not talking about adding one, blitzing, like most Eagle fans would like to see. Jonathan Gannon just doesn't do that. And I don't think he's going to do that in this game either. But they do come hard and they do come outside. Are you running a risk with that? Because Patrick Mahomes might be the best off schedule, outside the pocket, created on the fly type quarterback. Do you think the Eagles blitz will have any kind of mush rush characteristics to it to try and keep Mahomes in the pocket rather than let him get outside and start to create some magic?
Well, that could be kind of an in-game type of feel situation for JG and his staff. I mean, we don't know how healthy Mahomes will be. I'm assuming he'll be closer to 100% with that ankle that has bothered him the last couple of weeks. I don't think he'll be 100%, but if he's close and he's able to move and get outside and do things on a consistent basis, then yeah, you might see an in-game adjustment. But I think it's going to be a feeling out process. I think the Eagles are going to play it straight up, and they're going to see what Mahomes can do physically before they decide to make any decisions on whether we should mush rush, blitz, or play our ends straight up rather than having them cut inside and leaving the outside exposed. And if they do, then you have to make sure Kaiser White is running down the quarterback if he has to. I mean, I thought Kaiser White played really well, by the way, against the Niners. He did a good job against Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield. He tripped them up on one play on a little pass over the middle that probably would have gone for a touchdown if Kaiser's not running behind him and trips him at the feet. But yeah, I think the Eagles will play it straight up initially, see where Mahomes is physically, and then adjust in game if need be.
Boy, my advice to Eagles fans, and I've said it, and I'm going to say it to Seth on the post-game show, pre-game show for JAKIB Media. It's just put the blitz in the back pocket against Patrick Mahomes. Stop talking about it for a week. Then you can start talking about it again week 1 of next year. This guy's going to kill you if you blitz. He's going to kill you. Healthy or not, you're playing into his hands.
Right.
To me, it's got to be, all right, 78 sacks, go get home like you've gotten home all year. Why change at this point against the best quarterback in football?
Yeah, and they have the horses to do it, right? I mean, we're talking about Reddick, but Josh Sweat is a danger on the other side too. Yeah. And you have that interior. Hargrave has 12 sacks this season. Cox had 7, I think it was. I mean,
8 for Bletch. Don't
Fletch.
downgrade Bletch.
Yeah. He'll let you know about it if you do. But yeah, the Eagles, they got the horses to do it. They don't have to blitz. They can play it straight up. If they're not getting home, then maybe you blitz them, a time or two in the game. But we'll see where Mahomes is physically with that ankle too before any hard decisions are made.
All right, Eddie. The first thing we talked about when we punched you up today was Ed Kracz going shorts in Arizona. He's ready to don the shorts, get out there to Arizona, put the shorts on. Unlike the last time he was in the Super Bowl in the Mall of America in Minnesota because it was 9 below outside. It was just 5 years ago that the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, but there's 2 ways to look at that. Either though that was a long time ago, if you want to go in comparison to the Chiefs who were just there 2 years ago, so it really shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't have an effect. Or you could look at the Chiefs prior to Andy Reid showing up. 50 years between Super Bowl appearances. They hadn't been there for 50 years, and now they've been back for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. There's a handful of guys on this Eagle team that were part of that 2017 team. Yeah, guys like McDonald and McMullen and Kracz are trying to compare the 2 teams and how do they match up, and is it a better Fletcher Cox now than it was 5 years ago, and Jason Kelce? Is that going to be part of the conversation when the Eagles are in doing their work, getting ready, getting prepped, just hanging out with each other, not in front of mediaites. Do you think that is part of the conversation, or can they just narrow focus and keep this one task, one game in mind and not be affected by anything that has happened previously?
Well, a lot of the young guys, like I talked to Jordan Davis on Saturday, and I've talked to Kobe Dean, and the older guys, the guys like the four you mentioned, Cox, Graham, Kelce, and Johnson, who've been there, they've already kind of talked to them about the experience and the distractions that are going to be out there, and enjoy the moment. But you also have to do your work too, so you can't get too caught up in what's taking place. But they've already had that conversation with these young guys, and they seem like, they've learned the lesson. But until you get there and you experience it, it's two different things. But I don't think it'll be a factor, to be honest. I think the Eagles, they had a pretty good week of work, John. I don't know, what little we saw, but talking to the players, I think they had a pretty good week before they left for Arizona on Sunday, with game planning, putting the game plan in. And that's really where you have to start. These 2 weeks between the title game and the Super Bowl, that week before you go to the Super Bowl site is very valuable. You have to make sure everything's in. You've practiced it, because next week, the Super Bowl week, this week, it's going to be tough to do those things. So I think they've done a good job of that. I think they've spread the message that, hey, enjoy the moment, but listen, these opportunities don't come along very often. And Brandon Graham talked about it. He said, look, it took me 8 years to get to my first Super Bowl. And he goes, and I thought I'd get to one, but now here I am 5 years later, year 13, and I'm going back. And who would have thought that? So I think they're preaching, hey, this is an opportunity. This is something that we have to take advantage of, because you don't know when you're coming back. If you're coming back, look at Dan Marino. He went in his rookie year or second year. He went to a Super Bowl.
Second year. Yeah.
Never went back. So.
And he says all the time, he thought he was going back. He thought he'd go back again and again and again. Yeah. You have to take advantage of these situations. One player, you and I got to talk to him a little bit in the locker room, Jason Kelce. We've talked about, he's always year to year at this point. He got asked the question, does winning or losing this game, will that have an impact on you coming back? He said no. What do you think Jason Kelce is, Ed Kracz, moving forward? Is this it?
Yeah, he doesn't even know. I would just be giving you my opinion. I think that, he's not a guy that likes to sit still and do nothing, right? I mean, he's kind of admitted that through the years. So he's playing at an awfully high level.
Yeah.
But then if they win a Super Bowl, it's hard for him to get his body ready to play 17 games. It's easier now, the way the CBA is written. The training camp practices aren't as, intense or hard hitting. Kelce gets the walkthrough. The Eagles do a lot of walkthroughs, so that's easier on the body. He gets a day off as a resting player, but it's still hard for him to get that body at 35 years old. He'll be 36 next season.
Yeah.
Into shape to play. And then he has the family situation. He's got his third daughter who's going to be due any minute, right? Could be this week before his wife even goes to Arizona.
Could be at the Super Bowl.
Could be at the Super Bowl.
The doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. He's reached out to Zach Ertz, right, about who his baby doc was when Julie and Zach Ertz had their baby boy back in August. So to answer your question, I think if the Eagles win it all, I don't think he's coming back. I think he'll go out on top. But he said whatever happens in the Super Bowl won't impact his decision. So that's just my opinion. I think it's just so hard for him to play and get his body ready week in and week out. This guy's made 140 straight starts. This will be his 140th straight start. That's amazing. 5 Pro Bowls. Does he want to try to come back and make it a 6th Pro Bowl to tie? I think it's Dwight Stevens for the most ever by a center in NFL history. He's really close to passing David Akers in most games played. I think he's 12 behind Akers in the most games played in Eagles history. These are all goals that, maybe he wants to say, hey, let's take a run at them. I'll get my body ready to play one more year. But I just have a hard time seeing it. I really do. I think he'll probably step away.
And, oh, by the way, Ed Kracz will ask him that Sunday after the game, and he'll ask him again at the parade, and he's not going to make his mind up on this for months. I guarantee you. He'll give the Eagles a clue and let Howie know what he's probably going to do.
Oh, yeah, he'll let the Eagles know, yeah.
But he will not be making any public statement to either of these two fine reporters who seem to have a good relationship with him. No, that's going to be state secret level information.
And by the way, the Eagles drafted Cam Jurgens for a reason. They drafted Landon Dickerson for a reason the year before. Jason keeps giving the Eagles a heads up, like I'm at the end. But then he keeps coming back.
And the Eagles don't mind. I mean,
no.
Listen, Cam Jurgens, if Kelce comes back, he might end up being your right guard because Siamalu's we don't talk enough about Isaac Siamalu and his free agent status, but Isaac, I think, is gone. I think some team's going to pay him a lot of money, like the Lions paid Halapoulivaati Vaitai after that Super Bowl. So I think if Kelce comes back, then Cam could be your right guard next year.
All right, Eddie K, it is the last time we'll have you on before the game. You're going to be busy running around in shorts, showing off those wrestling thighs out there in Arizona. So we're not going to get a chance to get you to get on the record about this game. Here's how I'm asking my final question. Same way I asked Johnny Mack on CBS Sports last night. If the Eagles are to win this Super Bowl, the element of the game, the aspect of the game that they must win, must come out on the right side of would be what? What do the Eagles most specifically have to do to be victorious in Super Bowl 57?
I'll say they have to run the ball, probably. I mean, they've done a good job in the two playoff games. I think they need to run the ball. I mean, this offense of the Chiefs is very dangerous with Kelce and Mahomes. I don't think a whole lot of their weapons on the outside, but it's still a dangerous offense. So to kind of combat that, the Eagles are going to have to control the clock, control the pace, control the football. And the best way to do that, of course, is a good running game. So I think they're going to need to run for over 110 yards, let's say 120 yards maybe, to win this football game. And that's, to me, the key for them to win the game. And I think they will be able to do that.
At Kracz E on Twitter, follow him. He's going to be in Phoenix tomorrow. Going to update you from there each and every day. SI.com/NFL/Eagles. I'll turn Jody's question around. How do they lose the game? If they lose the game, what does Kansas City have to do?
Well, Kansas City has to control Hurts. I think they probably have to get a turnover or two. The Eagles are very good at taking care of the football, but on a big stage, you don't know how that's going to play out. But I think they have to control Hurts because Hurts has some obviously great weapons in Brown and Smith and Goddard. And if you're not pressuring Hurts or making him make quick decisions that he might not want to make, it's going to be tough. And so I think controlling Hurts obviously is the key for the Kansas City defense and trying to get a turnover from him, if not two.
Yeah, I don't think he's turning it over. I think it's a +1 is a big plus for the Eagles come Sunday. Eddie Kracz, safe flight out to Arizona. We appreciate your leading all the way up to the Super Bowl with us all year. Oh, we're going to call you after the Super Bowl is over and done with. You got that figured out, right? We're going to continue to call you and put you up, right?
Yeah. I have a big question mark on my calendar for every day that, wondering which day it will be so I can pencil it in. But
you think McMullen's giving you wrestling advice, coaching advice because he likes you? No, he knows he wants to continue to ask you.
I got to give my wisdom out, Jody. I have to do it.
It's tough to keep that bottled up. I know.
Yeah. Eddie, good stuff. Always a pleasure, bud. Thank you much.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy Arizona.
Yeah, thanks.
Ed.
Ed Kracz will be on with us next week after the Eagles and the Chiefs play in Super Bowl 57. Victorious celebration thereafter. A what the hell happened appearance by Ed Kracz next week. Who knows? We got to get to Sunday first. We got to come back and put a bow on the show. McMullen, McDonald.